You want to come forward? There's the whispers. And there's practically nobody, so.
We're too attached to our spot.
Krishna Prabhu, would you like to play Karatas because you're sitting right next to them? Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Ashtotar Sutta Shri Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki. Hidayat Gaur Sita Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadini Vishvishashanavati Pachati Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Janmadire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamaśloke Bhagavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 29, which is entitled Talks Between Narada and King Prachina Barihi. And today we shall be discussing from text 26 to 27. And we have text 26 on the board. So perhaps we can chant 26 together and then 27 I do maybe alone. So we chant every word first. Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushash Tu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushastu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushastu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik. Please chant.
Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushastu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik.
Mataji's.
Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushastu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik. Yadatmanam Avigyaya Bhagavantam Param Gurum Purushastu Vishajeta Guneshu Prakrite Svadrik.
Thank you. Then I read also 27. Gunabhimani satada karmani kurute vashaha Shuklam krishnam lohitam va yatha karma vijayate. Now the word by word meaning, please recite. Yada,
Yada,
when. Atmanam, the Supreme Soul.
The Supreme Soul.
Avigyaya,
Avigyaya,
forgetting. Bhagavantam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of God.
Param,
Param,
Supreme. Gurum, the Instructor. Purusha, the living entity.
Living entity.
Tu, then. Vishajeta,
Vishajeta,
gives himself up.
gives himself up.
Guneshu,
Guneshu,
to the modes.
to the modes.
Prakriti,
Prakriti,
of material nature.
of material nature.
Swadrik,
Sadrik,
one who can see his own welfare.
one who can see his own welfare.
Gunabhimani, identified with the modes of material or modes of nature.
Identified with the modes of nature.
Saha,
Saha,
he.
he.
Tada,
Tada,
at that time. Karmani,
Karmani,
fruitive activities. Kurute, performs. Avashaha, spontaneously. Shuklam, white. Krishnam, black. Lohitam, red. Va, or. Yatha, according to. Karma, work. Abhijayate, takes birth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So the translation reads as follows. The living entity by nature has minute independence to choose his own good or bad fortune. But when he forgets his Supreme Master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he gives himself up unto the modes of material nature. Being influenced by the modes of material nature, he identifies himself with the body and for the interest of the body becomes attached to various activities. Sometimes he is under the influence of the mode of ignorance, sometimes the mode of passion, and sometimes the mode of goodness. The living entity thus gets different types of bodies under the modes of material nature. Purport. These different types of bodies are explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 22. Purusha prakritisto hi bhukte prakrit gunan karanam guna sangosya sada sadyo nijanmashu. The living entity in material nature follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Because of associating with the modes of nature, the living entity gets a variety of bodies from the 84,100,000 forms. It is clearly explained herein that the living entity has little independence, indicated by the word Swadrik, meaning one who can see his own welfare. The living entity's constitutional position is very minute and he can be misled in his choice. He may choose to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A servant may desire to start his own business and imitate his master, and when he chooses to do so, he may leave the protection of his master. Sometimes he is a failure and sometimes he is successful. Similarly, the living entity, part and parcel of Krishna, starts his own business to compete with the Lord. There are many competitors out to attain the Lord's position, but to become like the Lord is not at all possible. Thus, there is a great struggle for existence within the material world as different parties try to imitate the Lord. Material bondage is caused by deviation from the service of the Lord and attempts to imitate Him. The Lord is imitated by Mayavadi philosophers who try to become one with the Lord in an artificial way. When the Mayavadi philosophers think of themselves as liberated, they are under the delusion of mental concoction. No one can become one with or equal to God. To imagine this is to continue one's bondage in material existence. So the text and translation once again. Yadatmanam avigyaya bhagavantam param gurum purushastu vishajjeta guneshu prakrite swadrik gunabhimani satada karmani kurute vashaha shuklam krishnam lohitam va yatha karma vichayate. The living entities by nature has minute independence to choose his own good or bad fortune. But when he forgets his Supreme Master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he gives himself up unto the modes of material nature. Being influenced by the modes of material nature, he identifies himself with the body, and for the interest of the body becomes attached to various activities. Sometimes he is under the influence of the mode of ignorance, sometimes the mode of passion, and sometimes the mode of goodness. The living entity thus gets different types of bodies under the modes of material nature. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurumiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ganatham Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Shri Vishakha Vitamscha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyate Satarani Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Panchatattvatmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktyavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gauratushe Namaha. Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadraspatrabhyam Jagannathaya Te Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for being here. And before I begin, I would like to seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and senior devotees, so that I may be able to execute this devotional service primarily for my own purification. So, what we can discuss together today is actually a very interesting purport from Srila Prabhupada. Of course, contextually we know that it is a discourse. Shri Narada Muni is speaking with King Prachina Varhi, and he's delving into different topics, and yeah, this is a chapter where we are fairly in the beginning, but Narada Muni then explains the different analogies to Prachina Varhi, the analogy of the chariot, of the body, the senses, and then he also goes on, he further explains about Chandravega, Jara, etc. is also further explained. And then we see actually how this analogy which was given by Narad Muni is gradually unfolding, and the different symbols and their significations are clarified. So now, when we are here at text 26 and 27, because previously this false egoism of the living entity was explained, and how this living entity continues to exist in this body and suffer. And now this translation talks about the living entity's inherent nature of having minute independence to choose. So the living entity can choose either good or bad. And the influence of the modes of material nature are further discussed here. So Prabhupada gives actually a very interesting purport where he really enunciates on this point of how we are using our minute independence. And it is a very nice meditation, actually, even as devotees, to think of this. And when I was thinking about this minute independence, because here in the Sanskrit, an important line here is Vishajeta and Swadrik. Vishajeta means gives himself up, and Swadrik, one who can see his own welfare. So these two words are quite important because this clarifies how the living entity has independence. Now I was thinking of how we have, Prabhupada says it's very minute, the independence that the living entity has is actually very, very, very small. And although we have this something very, very small, we can make such a big misuse of it. So, such is the power of choices. So, of course, the power of choice in life is a very elaborate subject matter in itself. And before we go further into it, I thought it would be nice to also touch upon some important or highlight the important points that Prabhupada is making in the purport. Prabhupada says how the living entity is constantly actually not just influence but also enjoying the three modes of nature. And how is it that we can think that we can enjoy? Because in several of his lectures, Prabhupada clarifies that we are the Tatastha Shakti, or we are the marginal potency, and in a way we are superior to the material nature. And therefore, something superior can always enjoy the inferior. And therefore, we also have the tendency to enjoy. And therefore, we can enjoy the material nature, or at least we try. So we also try to enjoy in the three different modes of material nature. And because of our interaction with the three, and you can really think of the three modes of material nature of different colored glasses through which we see the world, and through which we see people or circumstances. And therefore, that is why, because of our interaction with the modes of material nature, things are good or bad. And it's actually very interesting to see that, to realize this point, that inherently nothing is good or bad. But according to our interaction with the modes of material nature, something becomes good or bad. That's a very essential point. And also as devotees, and I think this is also why the example of Queen Kunti is very important, because she was praying for more and more calamity. And why calamity, we might think, is a bad thing, that we don't want calamity. But Queen Kunti was in the mode of goodness, and she wasn't seeing calamity as a bad thing. Why? Because she was seeing calamity is actually good, because in calamity Krishna is with me. So that is the inherent nature of a devotee. The devotees is in Vishuddha Sattva, even above the mode of goodness. And therefore, a devotee always interacts with others or deals with situations in the mode of goodness or above. So that's a very interesting point. And of course, there are different various kinds of bodies, and it is said 84 lakhs species or forms which are there. And how is our little independence actually giving us this body form? And it's very interesting because if you think of it, it's like if you think of a hamster wheel. Everybody knows what a hamster wheel is. Like this is like a little box in which there is a wheel, and there's this little rodent or a hamster. If you put the hamster on the wheel, the hamster keeps rolling and it goes on and on. The wheel keeps running. And actually, in the material nature, we are also like hamsters. Why? Because the laws of nature are set. How the modes of nature work, how karma works, the principles are set. And now we have to only make our choice whether to act in the mode of goodness, passion or ignorance, and then we keep running on that wheel. So our little choice that we make, and mind you, our independence is very, 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 very minute. But it is the independence to choose good or actually the independence to choose Krishna or Maya. That's fine as that. So even though we have this very little independence, it is a great amount of misuse that we can do. And actually I was thinking of certain stories from Mahabharata which very clearly show the wrong choices that we can make. For example, there is the stories of the Vasus, and it was Vasishtha, if I'm not wrong. He had this very special cow, and I don't recall the... Makshanath, who do you remember? Surabhi cow.
Or Kamadin.
Huh?
Or Kamadin.
Kamadenu. Okay, it was a very special cow. I don't exactly remember which kind of cow. But King Vasishtha had a very special cow. And these Vasus, they were there, and when they discovered, oh, this cow is so special, and then the wife of one of the Vasus, she wants to gift this cow to one of her friends. That was her desire. But hey, it's someone else's cow, and that to a Brahmana, a saint's cow. And then the Vasus were discussing, no, it's not nice. And why did she want to gift the cow to another friend? Because then she can fulfill her desires. So even the cause or the motivation was not right. So the Vasus knew that to steal is wrong, to steal a cow is even much worse, and to try to fulfill something for a wrong personal motivation is also wrong. They knew everything, but they used their little independence in the wrong way. What did they do? They actually stole the cow. And as a result of that, what happened? The whole story of Mahabharata in a way also happened. Because then they were cursed, and then they had to take birth again as the sons of Ganga. And we also know that one of the Vasus who was not, whose life was not ended by Ganga Devi was Bhishma, and then he continued to live. So like this we have the whole story. So one wrong choice can actually have such a disaster. And again from the Mahabharata, another little independence that was misused. For example, when Duryodhana was born, and all the inauspicious signs were there, and then Vidura went to his father Dhritarashtra and said, Dhritarashtra, it's very clear that these are all wrong signs, all ill omens, and this child of yours is very inauspicious. He will just do wrong things in life. And then Vidura said, so Dhritarashtra, for the sake of your nation, for this family, for the entire dynasty, do away with this child. Don't keep him in the family. But what did Dhritarashtra do? He used his little independence and he said, no, I will keep my child. Why? Because he was attached. So like this, we see that although we have independence, it's so minute, but still it can be grossly misused. And we also can use this independence in different modes of nature. Goodness, passion and ignorance. And that way, of course, for us, every day is a choice. Every day we can make a decision. And sometimes because the laws of nature are so complicated and so intricate, we sometimes feel, oh, then I don't want to make a choice. And for example, I mean a very crude example, a lot of young boys, they don't want to change from white to saffron because they are scared, like like, I don't know, I'm just scared to make the choice. So choice is not an easy thing. Or many brahmacharis, they are scared to change in white. Why? Because they're scared to make this choice because of uncertainty. So choice, to make a choice, for example, many individuals, they choose temple life, but it's a difficult choice. Can I give up everything and move into the temple? So that's a scary choice because of the uncertainty. So the whole aspect of choice is not easy. And every day we can choose also in our temple life how we behave, because we have that little independence of how much Krishna conscious we can be. Every time we perform a service, there is a choice to perform it either in Vishuddha Sattva, Raja, Tama. So every time, anything we do, we can exercise this choice. So although the capacity we have to choose is very small, but it's very potent. So choice is a very important subject matter. And also Swam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj actually makes a very remarkable statement. He says that sometimes we think to choose or to take a risk or to make a choice is a risk, but sometimes to not choose or make a choice is also a greater risk. So therefore, life of a devotee is very much aligned with the aspect of devotional service. And Prabhupada uses this term Swadrik, meaning who can see his own welfare. So when one can see their own welfare, that is when they act in a Krishna conscious manner and they choose to be Krishna conscious. So of course, Prabhupada also goes on to discuss how individuals imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead and they want to become God. And he gives this analogy of how a servant may want to do his own business and then become a head of a company. So if you are working in a company but you want to start your own company, what do you have to do?
To go on your own path.
Yeah, you have to go away. And you have to start your own business and go away from the protection. So similarly, we wanted to start our own company. And then what did we have to do? We had to go away from Krishna. And the very, let's say, effect of divergence is lack of protection, or that shelter of protection is taken away. Why? Because then we want to compete. And Prabhupada makes this very nice point that when we are competing with our master, there can be sometimes success, but there can also be failure. So both are possible. But one thing is very clear, to become like the Lord is not at all possible. Actually, if you think of it in a very subtle way, if we want to become like the Lord, the very base of our desires is actually envy. It's not appreciation, it's not gratitude. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Gaurnithai ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gopimanandi Hari. So the very base of our desire to become like God is based on envy. And if you think of it in our also, relationship, day-to-day relationship, if we really are very desperate to become like somebody, if we really introspect, the base of that is actually envy. Because if we really admire somebody, we want to serve them, we appreciate them, there is gratitude, and of course we want to imbibe the qualities like them, but we don't want to become them. So there's a very fine line. And as soon as we think that we want to become this person and it's nice to do things like another person who you appreciate, but if you want to become this person, then the very base of that desire is actually envy. That, oh, I don't have this and I want this. Whereas when we have appreciation, when we have gratitude, then we admire somebody so much that the natural effect is service. And the natural reaction is actually service. Then we want to serve this individual, and therefore we imbibe qualities of that individual. For example, we see in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita it is mentioned that Sanatana Goswami, when he was spending so much time with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he even began to behave and look like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is stated. Why? Because he had the association, appreciation and service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore it is said that when we follow in the footsteps of Mahajana Yena Gathasa Panta, when we follow the footsteps of the Mahajanas, that's why the desired outcome that they achieved is also achievable. But there is a difference between following the footsteps and trying to imitate. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here. That these competitors want to attain the Lord's position by imitating. But no one can become like the Lord. And therefore, in the material world, everyone is trying to imitate this one person that they want to be, and there's so much enviousness around. And therefore, there is a great struggle for existence. And when there is this competitive, and it's very natural when that there is this very competitive feel, there is a lot of struggle. Why? Because everyone is trying to outdo the other. And therefore, if you see, this is actually the difference between the material world and material world of material enjoyment and the spiritual world of devotional service. Because in devotional service, or when we are rendering service together, if somebody is doing better than us, we don't try to think, oh, I have to also do that. No, what we want to do, oh, you're doing so well. Of course, we try and also become sincere, but we also praise, appreciate and encourage this other person who is doing better. Whereas in the material world, we try to bring the other person down. So this is the difference between the material world and spiritual world, and our material tendencies and spiritual tendencies. So when we introspect, actually it's a very nice introspection, that how we see relationships, what kind of choices are we making in our day-to-day. And Prabhupada makes a very significant point that material bondage is actually caused by deviation from the service of the Lord and our attempts to imitate Him. So whenever we deviate from the path of devotional service, and sometimes we can think, oh, when I fall down or when I bloop, that is deviation. Actually no, deviation is a very refined and very fine thing. And moment to moment we can deviate from Krishna consciousness. It is so sensitive. And when we moment to moment, when we deviate from Krishna consciousness, from devotional service, that is when our deviation starts, our struggle starts. And you can really see that these Mayavadis philosophers, they think, oh, I am God, they want to imitate God, and then they think, oh, because I am God, now I am liberated. And Prabhupada points out how this is a very delusion of material concoction, that actually it makes no sense in a way. If you think of it, it is pure material concoction, that there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who I should worship, but instead of worshipping Him, I envy Him, and I try to imitate Him, and then I think I am Him, and therefore I am liberated. So it's actually a very stupid logic that one can apply to come to such a conclusion. But of course, as devotees, we know that if one continues to this in this pattern, then one becomes more and more bonded in the material world. The bondage becomes stronger and stronger, because our false ego just becomes bigger and bigger. But the path of devotional service is very nice. Why? Because it really polishes our false ego. And of course, as devotees, we have also our good side, our bad sides, sides we don't know about ourselves, sides we don't want to see, sides we like about ourselves. But all the sides actually in Krishna consciousness gets polished. And sometimes this hurts a lot. It's like, for example, if you have a wound and there is a band-aid on it. And when you strip the band-aid fast, it hurts, right? You go like, ow, it really hurts. But once it's away, it's away. So that's also like the path of devotional service, that you really strip off the false ego really fast. So then we don't have to struggle life after life like the materialistic individuals outside. That's a very different mechanism. Because what happens there, they're also getting purified, but at the same time, if they don't lead an auspicious life, they also incur more and more bad sinful reactions. But if there is a person who's living in the mode of goodness, let's say outside, and has a very sattvic life, and he gradually gets purified, but it's such a long way. But in the path of devotional service, this purification is rather fast. So, of course, now is also the time of the marathon, and for example, even today, we are all devotees going out and distributing books. So actually, this is a very essential duty we have to distribute the message of Krishna consciousness, to go out on Harinam, to go out on Sankirtan, because there are really potent people out there. Like some people you meet on the streets, they are nice people. Sometimes they are just innocently indulging in sinful activities. They don't know better. So when we have this gift of Krishna consciousness given to us by Srila Prabhupada, which is really like a lift, when we take an elevator and we reach a floor. But when you see another, like for example, there are two brothers. One of them knows about the elevator and takes the elevator and goes up, and the other one is climbing up to the 50th floor through the staircase. How would the person feel? So that's really our responsibility also, that the living entities outside this door, the living entities who have not been able to take the gift of Krishna consciousness, it is our responsibility as fellow sisters, fellow brothers, to share it with them. Especially because when you taste the gift of Krishna consciousness and the happiness devotional service can give. Because it's said in chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Susukham kartum avyayam. This is a path of happiness. And of course, when you actually, in an unconditional way, with the right motivation, practice devotional service, externally things may go wrong, but internally you feel so satisfied and happy. That's just the effect of devotional service. And when you have this treasure of devotional service, how can you not share it with others? And also in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, I think it's text 14, Krishna says, Devi hesham gunamai mama maya dvaitaya mamivam prapadyante maya mitam tarantite. That a living entity can cross over this material nature, the three modes of material nature, simply by taking a shelter of me, simply by taking shelter of Krishna. So it is our utmost responsibility to at least make individuals aware. Most of them don't want to maybe even keep their eyes shut, be like Dhritarashtra, ignore the good advice. But it is still like Vidura had the duty to tell Dhritarashtra what is right. We also have the duty to at least make people hear the right message. That, they have this little independence, and they can choose to use this independence in these three modes of material nature. So, with that, we come to the conclusion of our discussion, where we discussed how we can choose our good or bad fortune with this little independence that we have got. And because of the influence of these modes, we become attached to various activities, various species, various persons, and we get different types of bodies. Therefore, to get ourselves out of this hamster wheel of material nature, we have to then surrender and take up the path of devotional service and share with others this path of devotional service. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada's transcendental book distribution ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. So if there are no questions or comments, then we will head to breakfast prasadam. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your attention.
I started to do lyrics around 2008. The Krishna gave me instruction to the next artist. And we could take a lot of time to finish song. What was a natural process? Sorry, what? Was a natural process.
Yeah.
But he came here and he make a very important service that he separate the recycle products like glass. It's very
Package,
and package. Yeah. It's an important point.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Radha Shri